right, guys. Today, this is Marcus Santebi with Goodsugar Podcast. Today's a little weird. We don't have the professional, perfect linguist of Ralph Sutton starting off the show. You're stuck with me. And I have this amazing, bright, and beautiful guest, literally bright looking, but also well lit. I'm poorly lit. And, we were almost going to cancel the show because we didn't have internet. And instead, we both showed up by accident. Today, I'm with Joy Martina. That's how you say your name?
That's right.
Where are you based out of?
I'm right now in Salzburg, Austria.
Wow, this is becoming so international, this show. I don't even know what to do with myself. When I researched you, I thought, wow, this is going to be such a great show because our guests know, our audience knows how cynical Ralph Sutton is. Anything that goes outside of the range of empirical science. And when I looked at you and I saw all the things that you were into, I was like, oh, this would be a lot of fun. So I think that, first of all, let me just get you talking a little bit about what you do and what you're into. And then from there, I feel like I can develop a way.
Strategy.
Yes. Strategy.
So I'm Joy, officially Dr. Joy Martina, and I'm a psychologist. So that's really woo-woo and out there. And what I basically do is I help people find their happiness, their joy in life. I've been working with a lot of really badass entrepreneurs, actually thousands of people from all walks of life. And yeah, I've noticed that a lot of people can be very successful. They can have the house, the cars, and, all the shebang. But sometimes all of that doesn't really make them happy. And then they usually end up at my doorstep when they've tried everything else. And then they say, okay, I have nothing to lose anymore. Let's try this crazy chick. So yeah, that's who I am.
Wow, that's a really beautiful intro for yourself.
Thank you.
Now you said doctor, so you have a doctorate in psychology?
I studied a whole bunch of stuff. So I started off with law, went into sociology, then communication sciences, psychology. And I was able to, at that time, do a sort of, it was never done again before or after, a conglomerate. So I'm maybe the only one who's done that kind of package. I'm just a student. I love learning stuff.
In other words, sorry to dwell on this. I don't want to seem like an academic snob. I didn't even graduate high school, but so you have a PhD or a doctorate in something?
I have a master's in communication science, and then I studied psychology afterwards to finish that off too. And my dissertation I wrote on the impact of social media on the brain.
Okay. All right. So I'm a little envious. I have to be honest with you. I realize how much easier some of my work would be if I had a stethoscope and I just said, I'm Dr. Mark.
Right? A white coat and your God.
Yeah, it's a great thing. Some plaques on the wall, etc. I've had to instead, just used other gimmicks to get people to listen to some of the nonsense that I say. But
same here, because the topics that I cover are so out there usually for people that they'll either, listen with a cocked eyebrow or make fun of it or whatever. And so I feel you there. I know that it can be really hard to earn credibility.
All right. So we're going to, if it's okay with you, we're going to do this thing on each other. We're going to help heal each other. We're going to analyze each other, and we're going to try to get into the nitty gritty. So,
okay. I'll give you my reflection then.
I'm already starting my work on you. So here's some things that help me understand you better. So from a perspective of ancient philosophies, do you identify with the teachings of Buddhist philosophy, or let's say Hindu philosophy, the teachings of yoga, or do you love them all equally? Which one do you really feel like is home for you?
It's global. I've studied all of that. So I'm also a yoga teacher, and I dabbled in Buddhism. I'm actually Church of England, which is, I think, the most wacky religion out there, because it was founded by Henry VIII, who eventually ended up.
They got great costumes.
Right? So that's what I was baptized in. And I was raised in a Catholic country in Austria. And I've studied all the rest. So I subscribe to no religion. If you were to ask me what is my religion, I would say something like love, because it's the highest frequency on this planet.
Maybe.
No, definitely. That has been proven many times over.
I don't know if you can prove that.
Yes, you can. You should start out reading. There's some great books out there. One is David Hawkins.
Well, it's just me.
Power.
We're going toe to toe. So
I love that. Power versus force.
I know exactly what you meant when you said that love is a great power, a great force. But if I were to have somebody with your intellect, I want to be more grounded in that word and make it accessible to people.
Let's do that. I love that. Yes, absolutely.
All, what is love?
Well, first of all, it's just a frequency. So if we just go basic science, we will see that everything is energy, right? So if everything is energy, then our bodies are energy, the environment around us is an energy, and you can measure that energy. And we're getting better and better in our scientific tools to actually measure energy. We can measure the energy in our brains, we can measure the energy in our hearts, even in our cells. So if we say everything is energy and everything has different frequencies of energy, then we can say they're very low frequencies. So if we go on an emotional level now, even emotions have frequencies, then guilt and shame are the lowest frequencies right at the bottom of the scale. And then if you move up, you'll find frequencies like anger, which I think is interesting that is higher than any depression. Actually, anger is a higher frequency. So it feels better to be angry than to be depressed. Then we go further up and we'll tap into the frequencies of the heart, and that goes into gratitude. Then if we ramp it up even more, we'll get into those beautiful feelings like bliss and ecstasy, which many of us sadly only know when we have, intercourse. But, we can have that within ourselves without having sex. So then we move higher and higher up, and then the highest frequency up top is love. So it's just a word for the highest frequency that we can measure on this planet right now.
Well, in theory, I like what you're saying. I feel like if you and I had 15 hours, we can work on that. Because here's why I was going to say is that, first of all, I think that if we take away some of the intellectual stuff that we put onto this, which is fine, it has its place. We just think about it and say, let's take out the word frequency. Let's pretend that word is not necessarily useful in this moment. The range of emotions that I feel are all perfect. They're designed to help me navigate this planet. I don't have to say shame is a low frequency. I don't have to say that even anger is a low frequency. I can just say it's on the spectrum. Where I would judge those things as negative is what my reaction to those things are. I can put those.
Well, they do feel also different in the body. And so here's the thing, because your cells respond to those emotions, and you can measure that. And if we say like someone's angry a lot most of the time, then things like liver damage start happening. It's just stress in the body, because you see that those emotions are also just energy in motion in the body. And depending on, as you say, what we do with them, how we respond to those emotions, then defines the actions we will take. And that will obviously define the outcomes that we create in our life. And then we will either have a life that is filled with anger and depression and shame and setbacks and whatever, and we'll be stuck in that kind of lower energy, or we'll be choosing for more helpful or more better feeling emotions like gratitude or even acceptance, is better.
It's very helpful what you're saying, except I'm still in a challenge mode here. And you forgive me.
Go for it.
I think that you took something from column A and you brought it into column B.
I do that the whole time.
It's okay. I'm
the female brain.
I'm very focused and I'm really concentrating, and
I like that.
I'm in a meditation. Okay.
Got it.
It's helpful. First, let's remind everyone that listening that all of this philosophy is utter nonsense. It means nothing. It's not the truth, because what the ultimate truths are cannot be really put into words, and sometimes can be confusing. And so what we're doing right now is we're in the engine room tinkering with the mechanics to find a better way to say an important message in a simpler form. I would never try to help somebody by getting this granular with them and explaining all the differences. People would lose their mind and the world would be on fire and nobody would put it out. What I really want to define for myself, for me, I feel like it's a mission and a purpose for myself, is I want to be additive to great philosophy. I don't want to repeat and regurgitate. I'm 52 years old. I've been reading this stuff my whole life. And when I see a shortfall in the way something is taught, I don't want to just go out and teach it again the same way, because how do we make progress? So the first thing that I was actually expressing was that for me, every emotion that's on the spectrum of what is possible for me to feel is neutral. Shame, anger, happiness, joy, they're neutral experiences. Yes, one may feel pleasurable, the other one may feel discomfort. But I still have an option of how I react. For example, when I experience shame, I can take that experience and use it as a learning mechanism. Like, for example, if I was 3 years old and I just started taking a dump in the middle of the living room in front of the whole family and everyone laughed and I felt shame, I might have learned something really valuable, that we don't shit in the living room, we go to the bathroom. And throughout all of the history, even going back to Neanderthal men who were very advanced and powerful, they all had those social structures because it's unpleasurable for the group to have to watch their members crap in the living room. So, with that being said, I want to just bring it back to full circle and take away the word frequency. Is what I try to teach people to do is to not place judgment on their feelings, to place a value judgment perhaps on a reaction to their feelings, what they do. The feeling is very, very important, especially letting yourself have it. The problem with humanity is we are stifled and suffocated. We don't actually have an opportunity to feel the range of emotions. And that's what causes so much suffering. Go ahead. Now you go ahead.
I agree with you in many points, especially to the point that humankind right now is kind of stuck in their emotions and suffering due to that, because they're maybe judging all those emotions that they're feeling and they're labeling it with certain experiences. And usually it is, because you see most feelings that we have are triggers of past events that happened and triggered certain emotions then. And that same cocktail is re-triggered in similar situations now. So many of us are living through that lens of the past. And I agree with you that, often reading yet another book, going to yet another self-help workshop is not going to bring you the success that you're looking for, because what we're missing in those instances is that we have that mental knowledge, right? We're not connected to our intuition, because that means we haven't had that experience. Because you see, the moment a person has an experience where it all clicks in for them, where they feel that that is true, nobody can take that away from them ever again. So yeah, I think we're on board with each other in many ways. Maybe the approach is, obviously for me, someone who's been working and teaching this stuff, and really my success is when I see others rise. That's the only thing I care about. Whether they believe me or not, I really don't give a
No, it's not.
What happens is it working? Is it working for them or not?
Important as long as you do not become attached to what it is that you're offering and rise above other people. I'm not saying that you do, but what I see a lot of
that guru competition. Yeah. No, I'm not into that.
No, that's the value. The value is that one of my good mentors, the great Fred Bishi, who's 91 years old, and there's many reasons why I love and respect his teaching. And I came to him as an expert in food, but found out that because of his lifestyle that he's lived for such a long time, that he has so much more to offer me. And he's planted a lot of gems in my mind that I still think about and play through, which is that human beings, interestingly enough, we can see that we were set up a certain way on how we function. It's not just random. Each human being isn't just a random machine going out there and trying to figure out how to glue the whole thing together to function. We have a way that we operate. We are designed as of this moment in our evolution for going back again to, I started studying Neanderthal man by accident, because we always classically look at them as being savage and a lower version of ourselves, which I think is a mistake, because they survived for 300,000 years without destroying the environment, without having genocide.
Electricity.
What I find very interesting in the history of what you would consider humanoid, so to speak, is that we are really designed to have a belief system. Mm-hmm. It's quite different than what I observe other animals to be engaged in. We're cerebral. We believe in things. Even the atheist has a whole set of belief systems that they follow. And the belief system is what empowers. It's almost like the real source of energy.
Well, it either empowers us or disempowers us.
Yes. And so I think that where we have common ground, you and I, is that if you have a belief system that's based on negative things like greed and power and involves things that are not compassionate, not even putting judgment on those things, it's a path to destruction.
Yeah, well, I think we can make it even simpler, maybe. If we look at the way that our brain functions, right? Let's take all emotions, all beliefs, everything out. And we just say, okay, we have this brain. Everybody has a brain. And this brain is rather like a computer. So if you look at it, and I've been really hard on neuroscience because it's just so fascinating to see how our brain is basically just running programs the whole time. The brain is real lazy. So it wants to use as little energy as possible to just get us in, through life, surviving.
Every brain, would you classify that and say every brain is like that, or can there be exceptions?
And I'd say a common brain, unless we start training the brain and start getting more out of its potential. And that is something that I feel very passionate about, and I can get really pissed off about of how little of that we teach our children. Because you see, if we really understood how we learn and we teach in a way that really applies this knowledge, then we would not be teaching our kids the way we're doing now. Anyway, I digress. What I'm saying is that if we look at this computer that's running all these programs, and we have simply 5 channels of information of how our primary channels of how we get information in, right? So all of this that's around us is basically information at some level. So we get this information in, and then depending on, as you say, our belief systems or our capability of taking information in, the channels that we're taking in, we will then decide on that reality that we're creating inside of our heads. And you see, the brain does not know the difference between something that you imagine and something that is real, which makes all of this, programming that we're exposed to on a daily level so really interesting to look at, to say, what am I programming my brain with? Am I listening to empowering stuff all day that's actually supporting me, that's helping me learn? Or am I actually just listening to some mass programming that's enticing me to buy a whole bunch of stuff and to buy in all kinds of other things that are not necessarily good for me? So that awareness, I think, is so important. And once we start becoming aware with what we're feeding our brain with and our bodies, we can start actually noticing what's going on and start tackling all these things inside of us and outside of us.
So okay, let's see you turn your powers on yourself for a moment. Mm-hmm. So it's my assumption that I make about all people thus far that I met that are not living in a cave and haven't mastered all aspects of character is that, generally speaking, we're also prone to habitual and addictive behavior patterns. Do you still feel that you have some addictions in your life at this present moment?
Absolutely. I think they keep turning up. Every time I think, I'm clear it all, then the next thing happens, because we just get so attached to stuff.
Get intimate with me and give me a handful of what you think are some.
Oh, sure. So let's start out. So I would say early on, a total addiction to chocolate. Chocolate was my nemesis. That was an easy one. Then I would say the addiction to procrastination. I would always push stuff right to the last minute until I would then finally do it.
Was that an addiction or just a behavior pattern?
I think it's both, because you see, addiction is a behavioral pattern. All addiction is a habit. It's a habit of doing something a certain way.
Habit that you lose control of. Addiction.
Well, every habit is that you've gone on automatic pilot. It's not something you're consciously thinking about anymore. It's just something you do. So every habit is like a hardwire in your brain. It's a synapse. It's going that way. And every time you get up in the morning, you'll get up most likely with the same foot. You'll take the same steps into the bathroom. You'll start brushing your teeth on the same side. That's a habit. And if you want to break that habit, it usually takes 90 days of being conscious until it goes on automatic again.
You classify brushing your teeth as an addiction or as a habit?
I would say it's a good addiction.
Well, I was trying to separate the difference. Is that what in my work,
you've labeled addiction as something that is negative, right?
No. What I've done is, here's how I look at it. And then this is my background. I'm sober 35 years. I got sober when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
We are obviously creatures of habit, not necessarily following an instinctual code unless you call the programming of our childhood the thing that replaces addiction. But let's take that aside for a second and say an addiction is a behavior pattern that I, for the time being, have lost control over. I can't seem to stop doing it.
Although it's negative towards me, right? I'm harming myself, but I cannot stop harming myself.
It might not be harmful yet. We didn't get to that type of addiction. That's
okay. So there are good addictions, you're saying?
We could say that there's addictions that are less harmful than others. Like obviously,
but then they're still harmful.
Well, if I'm addicted to going to the gym and I'm benefiting my body, but I'm distracting my mind and I'm not feeling my feelings, you can say overall in terms of my life that could have a negative impact. But for the time being, we'll classify smoking is different than going to the gym. Overeating and eating junk food is different than, say, my addiction to meditation or my addiction to walking. There's different classifications of what a person would focus on when they're stepping into mental health. Like I wouldn't tell a person who was just walking into an AA room that they're going to have to, at that exact moment, deal with sex addiction, sugar addiction, their money addiction, their addiction to depression. They lose their mind. They put a gun to their head and they'd kill themselves. So habit and addiction are slightly different. Addiction is the one that you've lost control over until you decide that it's time to take control over it.
I agree with. Sure.
Thank you. So when you describe what I do in my writing is when you said you're addicted to chocolate because I have such a great intellect like you, and I'm not just saying that to be a jerk. I love you. I miss you already. I want to talk to you every day. I'm alone sometimes, right? I don't have anyone to talk about this stuff with, and it's great. So when you say you're addicted to chocolate, I skip the compound. I don't think about chocolate. I think about what I know that it does. If we were just talking face to face, you said I'm addicted to chocolate, I'd say, oh, you're addicted to stimulation.
Sure.
And I would say, what is the stimulation for? And I would try to get to the root of what effect you're trying to have on your chemistry. So I know what to replace it with.
And that's a feeling then usually, isn't it?
Right. So what did you switch coffee with? I mean, what did you switch your chocolate for? What did you
yoga
do next? What?
I went to yoga.
So you get from the meditation and from the relaxation and from the breathing exercises,
I get the same kick.
Okay. So here's an honest question. Do you feel that you have some addictions to substances like coffee or alcohol or anything like that?
In phases, for sure. I think to a certain degree of yes. So that's why I always challenge myself and always then leave it out for a while to say, okay, ready now. It's going to take it all out. So I play with these. I call them attachments. I play with them. And I think they're fascinating because we learn so much from, as you say, you know, what am I giving myself now? What's the underlying need that I'm trying to fulfill?
What's the root cause of the motivator for that? And
that's right.
In my motivation, in my concepts is I like to classify things too. I say, to me, at the root of all those things is the early childhood trauma, which led to anxiety. And all the things that we're doing addictively are designed to try to help us feel better and manage anxiety. So when I think about it from that perspective, I know exactly what I need to do rather than act out on those things.
I think a helpful tip for our listeners might be a very simple way of finding that out for yourself. And that is the habit of asking an empowering question. And that could be as simple as, what is the most loving thing I can do for myself right now? And why is it so easy for me to know what the loving thing for myself to do right is? So something along those lines is very helpful to switch the view that we have in our brain. Like pictures another angle.
What's the most loving thing that you can do for yourself?
What's the most loving thing what I can do for myself right now? And why is it so easy for me to know what is right for me right now? And what's the best? What follows my highest good? However you want to phrase it.
Wow. Thank you.
You see, when we ask a question like that, our brain is trained to bring us an answer. So I can ask, for instance, here's an attachment that I had. I used to ask, I had this question running subconsciously, and obviously I wasn't aware of it, because that's why it's subconscious. And that was, what the fuck is wrong with me? So whenever anything would go wrong in my life, and that could be simple as it didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go, I would say, what the fuck is wrong with me, right? What am I doing wrong? So if I have that question running, then obviously the stuff I'm going to produce is not going to be that great. So then I switched and I decided, okay, instead of that question, I'm going to train my brain to ask a more empowering question. And that, for myself, the one that I chose is, how can I experience even more grace right now? And that shifted a lot for me. That simple practice. So if anybody listening wants to do that, write it down, become aware of what is that underlying question you're asking yourself now. And then when you found it, and that can be a process. It took me 2 days, and I was getting so frustrated with myself that I couldn't find it. But then I did, it popped up. And then once you've elicited your disempowering question that you keep asking, switch it and ask yourself, you know, what would you like to experience more in life? Experience, right? And that's why I chose grace. But, you know, choose love, choose joy, choose bliss. I don't know, whatever it is that you desire. Try it out.
Thank you. I hear you. And I think that for me, what I have learned, and I think there's something really fascinating about how, as I get older, certain concepts just sort of become much easier for me to grasp. Things that I was reaching for in my understanding, if I would read certain types of philosophy, they were always a mystery to me. And then over time, through experience and just through, I guess, letting certain things sink in, it becomes a way of life for me. And when you said, what is the most loving thing I can do for myself? The highest answer I can have today is to take a deep breath and breathe. Just by asking the question, when a person shows up to ask the question, what's the most loving thing that I can do for myself? They're already 75% the way there because of the willingness to be a part of a solution, the willingness to be part of the healing. And so for me, when you said, what's the most loving thing I could do for myself? If you would have told me years ago, just breathe, I'd be like, what's wrong with this asshole? Why would you?
But the thing is, if we had done it then, I often think, you know, I read, I don't know how many books. If I had only just practiced just one of those things diligently for, say, I don't know, 3 months or something, I think it would have gone faster. I don't regret it, because I think all the rabbit holes that I went down are great.
You know what?
Now,
did you see the movie, The Karate Kid?
Yes.
Remember the first one with Ralph Macchio and
dimly.
Okay. He wants to learn martial arts, but the teacher tricks him and says, "You're painting the fence, and you have to do this motion." And then he makes him buff all the cars with this motion, and he gets angry, the character, because he's doing all this menial work, but it's repetitive. He has no understanding of the value of the work until the teacher takes him and shows him how those motions are now the actual fighting defenses and the offenses. And so the idea is that when I was younger, if you would have told me these things, I would have had to do them repetitively for decades and still not have understood the meaning of them. So while there's a value in just taking the action, regardless of what you think, what's more important is to try to crack open the consciousness so that we're not always behind the 8 ball on the lesson. So if you apply what you said, if I only just did those things when I was younger, then the 85-year-old version of you could be saying the same thing about the person you are today. If I only did
very
this.
True. Very true. Absolutely, because hindsight is always 2020,
so
right?
The idea behind the breath is this to me, is that, first of all, it's the one absolute truth, is that I have this breath in this moment. Everything else is a thought process. It's it's a strategy. I'm lost.
It's the only thing that's real in that moment.
Exactly. So the value, taking a deep breath is not going to solve finance problems. It's not going to get somebody the lover they always wanted. It might, because it might make them
stop for that 1 second. And because of that, stopping in that 1 second, another synchronicity could happen.
It might, and you might also win the
I would say that one breath is always going to have the chance of saving your life.
I would
literally.
Most people that I know, we'll keep it to people in early recovery, wouldn't have that kind of faith. They need more, they need something a little bit more grounding. And what I would say to them, the groundingness is really simple. Your brain functions better when it's oxygenated, as all the cells of your body do. If you're struggling with something in your mind, feed yourself oxygen and make that the starting point to then go out and tackle your problems, as opposed to what we do is we constrict, we hold in, we don't breathe properly, and that becomes...
In my world, I just call that energy. I say you've got to take that energy in, and usually when we're stressed, we have very superficial breath, right? So we're not really breathing with our full lung capacity, which means our whole nervous system is getting stressed, which stresses the rest of our body. Then we get into fight and flight and da-da-da. There we are. Our brain is frazzled. And also the breath is so important for the brain to be able to relax. So, breath is that one thing you need when you want to go from beta, from that frazzle thing, into theta, right? You can only do it with your breath.
Thank you. That's great. And I would say to come full circle with what you said about love, the reason why I challenged you on that was not because I'm an asshole, which I might be, but we'll decide later, is because in my thought process, as of recently, I was actually really contemplating the word love. And I felt that love was an emotion. And then I said to myself, what is higher than emotions are states of mind, like a state of being. And so I really thought that there has to be something bigger than love that encompasses all the good things, that it's an umbrella. And I realized what it was. And that for me, it was the word compassion. So when I thought of the highest state of mind or the highest frequency or vibration, I thought it was actually transcendent than just temporal feelings, things that pass, things that rise and fall. And I thought to myself, maybe compassion is something I can be in, even if I'm in a negative emotion. So I thought to myself, I can't feel love when I'm feeling hate, but I can feel compassion when I'm feeling hate. So
and you know what's beautiful about that?
What?
Because compassion is so beautiful for your heart. The moment we feel compassion, our heart rate variability syncs and our brain syncs with our heart. So what happens then is that our brain gets into the gamma waves. So when you see these gamma waves that are measured with Buddhist monks when they do the prayer of compassion. So when they are chanting that prayer, they'll see spikes of gamma in their brain waves. And it seems that these gamma brain waves are that connection to that greater field, the quantum field, the whatever you want to call it now. So interesting and beautiful that you pick compassion for yourself. So maybe your question could be, how could I experience even more compassion now? And the word even more is nice because that's assuming that you're already feeling it, but you're going to add and amplify to that.
It's new. It's new for me. It's very powerful where it's coming from. I wrote a book recently that I published, and it's part of the
business. What's it called?
It's called 7 Ways to Smash Your Enemy's Head. No, it's called it's called The Goodsugar Diet. And the reason I wrote that book was because my background is I started a chain of raw food juice bars in New York that got to 85 stores. And diet obviously is a big thing for people. So I wrote a book really that just talked about food, and I incorporated addictive behavior patterns and really integrated that into that book. But I also have about 9 other books on related subjects complete that I'm not going to launch yet just because I need time to focus in on the projects that I'm working on. So one of the books that I'm working on is a book that really talks about meditation. And in that journey of writing that book, I really had to think about this word compassion, because for most of my life, the word had an association with spiritual events. It was just my flavor. I'm not saying that's right. It was just how I thought of it. And then suddenly I realized that both meditation and compassion for me are no longer spiritual ideas. They're very highly intellectual concepts. Meditation is an intellectual practice of...
So then your conscious mind could relax and you could experience it.
Right. And so compassion to me is a graduation where as you develop your mind, and if you're really, truly intellectual, to me...
Really?
You don't want to hurt things.
Yeah, but compassion is actually something we're taught as children.
Yeah.
You know, compassion is actually the core. And there I'll go with, the Dalai Lama for now, right? And I'm going to say compassion is who we are at our core. But the thing is that we learn empathy as children. But if we grow up in an environment that does not teach us empathy because our parents maybe didn't learn it themselves, then we're going to miss that piece. And we're going to have a real hard time getting into compassion because it's a pillar of it, right? So, and training, I think, you know, dropping into our heart space, connecting to our hearts again, is very hard when we're in a frazzled brain. And if we're up there thinking the whole time, we're going to be in beta, high frazzled brain waves. That's not how we create. We create in theta. We create when we learn in theta, when our brain is relaxed.
What about Vincent Van Gogh?
What about him?
He was in, what you said, Vita, he was in very frazzled brain and was still able to create in spite of that. And perhaps...
Well, he was a genius. Imagine how amazing he would have been if he would have been in theta. He might have not had to chop his ear off.
He might have become a lawyer. He might have become a solicitor.
I'm trusting it was perfect the way it was because look at the paintings he left us.
All right, listen, you're amazing, and I would love to have you back on the show with Ralph. And now we got to know each other a little better. We know each other's style. Where the concepts that I want to bang Ralph over the head with in a gentle is taking more action that's abstract and esoteric for him and just trusting in the process. Like, in other words, fake it till you make it. One of my favorite sayings of all times.
Mm-hmm.
Will you come back on the show?
Sure.
It's amazing. Anything else that you want to yell at me, scream at me? You want to promote something? You have any books, any publications that you're launching?
Absolutely. I have a bunch of stuff. So I have 3 things that I care very deeply about. One is the Sleep Your Fat Away, which I thought we were talking about. And that's kind of the brain piece to weight loss. That's where I teach people how to listen to the intelligence of their bodies. I use all the hypnotic tricks like a virtual gastric band, blah, blah, blah. Then the second one is how to use your intuition to change your life. So I help people to connect to that highest intelligence. And the third one is my Joyful Kids program. So I've started a global initiative to help children find their joy. So I'm using all the things that I've learned and been applying with mainly adults and very privileged adults. I'm now using for kids. So my aim is to get into the refugee camps. That's why I'm also here in Europe. And I've developed a whole online training and platform, and I'm training ambassadors because I want millions of joyful kids on this planet. That's my dream.
That's amazing. Well, you're if you don't mind me saying, you're very fortunate to have come to a place in your life where you're doing really great things, even though you're still human and you still have your own addictions and your own problems. I mean, hey, look, it's a human condition. And I think that it's very honest for any great teacher to lead the discussion with, I'm human and I still make mistakes. I'm not perfect. Don't follow me, follow the teaching, that kind of stuff. That's my, but one of the books that I'm finished writing is called Making Fun of Gurus.
I like that. Do you know the song by Blondish? It starts now.
No.
Oh my God, download that. Blondish, it starts now. I think you will love it. It's got the voice of Alan Watts. And he's got that thing in there. And I know it by heart. But anyway, he talks about this guru competition. My yoga is faster than your yoga. I'm sorrier for my sins than you are. I love you more than you love me and all that. Anyway, I think you'll love it.
I think it's great. Thank you very much. Okay, this is great. I'll be in touch with you. I appreciate this. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Thank you.
Sure thing. Bye-bye.
Bye.